Hey there, are you ready to build a fitness business that becomes a true income producing asset? Then I welcome you to the Fitness Business Freedom Show, brought to you by Fitness Revolution. I am your host, Justin Hanover, and we have over 15 years of experience building thriving fitness businesses, and we are committed to sharing our knowledge and expertise with you. You can expect to hear proven business foundations and frameworks, success stories from our coaching partners, and guest experts to give you straight answers for your biggest questions. It doesn't matter if you have an online business, fitness facility, or operate as an independent trainer. You are in the right place to grow your business and create the personal freedom you desire. Welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Justin Hanover, success coach with Fitness Revolution. Before we dive in and bring on today's guest, I wanted to share a little bit about what you can expect to hear and who I have joining me today. So, today I have the pleasure of speaking with Jay Croft. Jay Croft is a veteran communicator with more than 3 decades of experience. Jay is a former newspaper journalist who also worked in marketing communications for some of the biggest corporations. He created Prime Fit content in 2018 to show fitness professionals how to reach more people over 50 who represent a powerful, lucrative demographic that is largely overlooked by the fitness industry. He also hosts his own podcast, Optimal Aging, writes for fitness organizations and publications, and contributes to CNN and WebMD. So within our conversation, we dove into marketing, if you didn't catch on to that, and especially his strategy around attracting the over 50 demographic. He hit on the importance of creating clear communication channels that easily portrays your values and process on how you serve. And a direct quote from Jay, if you're not making the time to tell your story, then you are missing the boat on other areas within your business. So this is a really important area. So let's get ready to have a conversation around a marketing perspective that sets you up for long-term success. Let's go ahead and bring Jay onto the show now.
Today's episode is brought to you by Fitness Revolution. So you started your fitness business and you've been in the game now a few years. You might have even seen some good growth over those years, but now you feel stuck. You feel like the momentum you once had just isn't there and you don't know how to get it back. Should you be focusing on your marketing, your sales, or your team? What is the next bottleneck to focus on that will allow you to break the chains holding you back? That is a great question. And one of the biggest skills as an owner is to be able to understand and identify the next biggest issue to keep the business moving forward. This is exactly why Fitness Revolution has created our proprietary needs assessment to allow you to quickly see where your business stacks up and receive immediate feedback on what to focus on next. It's a quick 10-question assessment that will be able to provide valuable feedback to get past sticking points and hit your next goal. Whether you are stuck, you're feeling frustrated with your current progress, or just want to dial in what's currently working, this assessment is the first step to making that happen. I invite you to head over to the show notes where a direct link to the needs assessment will be so you can easily access it there. Now, let's jump into today's show. Jay, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join me and our listeners and share your insights and wisdoms to help gym owners thrive.
Oh, you bet, Justin. It's good to see you. I'm glad to be here today.
It's absolutely my pleasure. So let's start with giving our listeners some perspective and how you created Prime Fit content and where you're at now with it.
Sure. So my background is in communications, big media and big corporations. And I had a turning point in my career shortly after I turned 50 a few years ago, where I thought, I don't want to do this for the rest of my working life. I want to write about things that that I'm more interested in and that are directly helping people. Because when you work for a large corporation, as I did in communications and marketing, or when you work at large media, like I did for 20 years as a newspaper reporter, sometimes I was left wanting a feeling like what I was doing is really having an impact on people. And so I decided I wanted to get into fitness communications somehow. And about the same time, after I turned 50, it was it's hard to explain, but I noticed very clearly that I was no longer being marketed to by the fitness industry. And I didn't take it personally. It's not, it's just something I noticed and thought, I think there might be something there, because all these gyms want these boys to come in and throw weights around for the cheapest price possible. And they're all chasing, right? They're all chasing the 25-year-old guys and the young girls who want to look good at the beach. And that's great, good for them. But there's a huge market, which I had aged into, that I felt was being ignored. And so I looked into it. I did my research as a reporter, did my due diligence, and found out that the older demographic, and by that I mean 50 and over. Some people say 55 and over. Some people say baby boomers. You get the idea. It doesn't really matter how precise you want to be about it, but it's a huge market. It's underserved by the fitness community, and it's full of millions and millions of people who have the time and the money to spend on their fitness in a way that 25-year-old boys just don't, No. And so being a communicator, I thought, well, how can I get into this? I'm not going to become a gym owner. I don't want to become a trainer. I want to help those people reach more in their audience. And so I came up with this idea that I would make content available to gym owners, studio owners, other fitness professionals who are interested in growing their business with people over 50, but they're busy small business owners. They don't have time to write their own content on a consistent basis. Maybe they're nervous to write because they don't feel confident about their writing skills. Maybe they don't know what to write about. Doesn't really matter. That I just saw a need there and a way that I could help and feel like I was doing something that was contributing. So that's how I got started. That was about 3 years ago, and just still at it.
Oh, I love that. I mean, it definitely makes sense, because it's a very important way to obviously connect with your ideal client. And I think it's definitely an area where a lot of gym owners know they need to do it, but they neglect it because it is a time consuming thing. I mean, there's no way around that. Like it is a time consuming thing to do it. And do it in a way that's actually going to be effective. And I think that's where you see that mix of like people who just don't do it, or people who do it, but kind of it's half put together. It's not like a cohesive message across the platforms and everything like that. So then it just becomes confusing.
Exactly. And it becomes something that is very clearly not a priority to you as the business owner, because, your toilet's backed up. And the front desk girl called in sick this morning, and for some reason your membership hasn't quite bounced back from COVID, despite your best efforts. You've got a lot on your mind. You don't really want to sit around and think about what should I write about today, and then take the time to actually do it. There are other content providers who do a similar service as I do. What distinguishes me is that I focus on the over 50 market. I'm not aware of anybody else doing that. There are some really good fitness content providers out there who are helping you reach, say, women in their 20s who are, having babies and want to maintain their figure, or elite teenage athletes who, their parents want to see if they can get them a college scholarship and if they've got what it takes to go farther. There are numerous niches out there, but I think I'm the only one that helps people target people who are a little bit older. And like I said, I mean, just about 50, 60, 70, into their 80s. But after that, it kind of tapers off. So,
I would agree. And there definitely is a mindset around, obviously, the younger crowd. I remember even when I had my facility, I had different marketing companies I would work with. They would create these landing pages for me. And the pictures they would use were almost embarrassing with like these girls and just like bikinis and stuff like that. And it was just like, what is that?
Right. I know. It's like we're not all 25. We don't all want to have huge muscles or date girls in bikinis. Or be a girl in a bikini, right?
Exactly. So I definitely I get where you're coming from with that. And and the type of crowd that you're going after,
Mhm.
it makes sense. And it definitely is an underserved. It's definitely, I would say, like, not the first thing that people think of when they think
Right.
of their ideal client, of who they want to attract in, and stuff like that. When in reality, I think it's exactly who people want. They just don't realize it, because they want the consistent person. They want the person that has the money, that has the time, and also has, I think, the awareness to want to be open to being coachable.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, typically, obviously, the younger person isn't really there mentally to want to be the best
Right.
coachable client that you have.
Or,
It,
I'm 58 now. When I was 25, I wanted the cheapest gym. I
mm-hmm.
didn't want any services. I didn't want a trainer. I knew what I was doing. My buddies and I knew what we were doing. Just give me the cheapest deal. And if there was a new one that came open in 3 months, or I started dating somebody who wanted me to go work out at a new place, I had no
Yeah.
loyalty. I didn't care. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to buy your extra services. Well,
Mm-hmm.
now I do, and I've got the money to do it. So
Yeah.
why aren't you going after me? And it's such a huge market. Just, I don't want to bog this down in statistics, but for anybody who's kind of scratching their heads at this, just some basic numbers are really helpful. There are 100 million people over 50 in this country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they control 70% of the discretionary spending. And discretionary spending includes things like
Yeah.
gym memberships and personal trainers. So, they stay with you longer. They spend more money while they're with you. They're more loyal to you. And here's what's really appealing to me as a writer: their stories are better,
Mm.
and as a trainer, if the steady money isn't enough for you to get you interested in, then I think the public service idea is, and the stimulation that you're going to have. A trainer told me once, look, if somebody in their 20s comes in and says they need to get ready for their sister's wedding in 3 months, I can do that. Any trainer in America can do that.
Yeah.
No problem. Got it done. Right. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Bring them in. Then after they go to the wedding, I never see them again. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's more interesting is people who are a little older and maybe they've had a shoulder replacement, or maybe they've, excuse me, not a shoulder replacement, but a hip replacement, knee replacement, some
Mm-hmm.
kind of surgery. Maybe they've been through a scare with some disease. Maybe they're worried because they're approaching the age that their parents were when they started to deteriorate,
Mm-hmm.
or they've started to have grandchildren, and the grandchildren don't want to play with them because they're not fun, because they
Yeah.
can't get down on the floor and play with you.
Yeah.
All these things that are so really, really compelling and really powerful, and I would think more interesting. They're more interesting to me.
Mm.
I would think they'd be more interesting to the trainer or the gym owner as well, but maybe not.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, I mean, it sounds cool to, like, have everyone be, like, fit and want to build muscle and be strong and fast, whatever this, but it's kind of boring. It's the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty much the same person, the same template, just different person.
Right.
And that gets kind of old after a while.
Yeah. Well, then
Whereas, go ahead.
there's one other aspect about this that we haven't touched on, and that is, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I'm not suggesting that you should abandon people in their 20s and 30s and 40s, but of course not. Or that you should not work with young men who want big muscles, or young women who want to look great at the beach. But there's all sorts of opportunities to service this market, the over 50 market, into your existing business, even if you don't want to focus on them. I'll give you just one obvious example, and you know this better than I do, that most gyms are empty from about 9:30 in the morning to about 3:30 in the afternoon, because younger people are working.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a great way to reach out and fill that gym and book times for your trainers, because you can provide a better experience for people who are just a little older and maybe working less or not working at all anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be open to those things and how you can maximize your dollar per hour. I mean, especially with having a physical location. So I think that makes complete sense to open up and explore that opportunity. So now, in terms of like gym owners, with like their marketing message and how well it lands. Where are you seeing a lot of gym owners drop the ball and go astray with that?
Well, I would say the most common errors, I guess, that I see or that I coach people on. Number one is consistency. And you have to bake in your communications into your business operations. Too many gym owners or trainers or studio owners think, well, I'll do that later when I have time, or that it would be nice if I had time to do that, but I don't have time to do that. And it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. You look at any brand you admire, any business you admire, and that can include a gym you're trying to emulate, someone you've met at a conference who you admire and you want to be like them. They're communicating. Your competitors who are beating you are communicating. And if they don't have time for it, they pay someone to do it for them because they realize it's an essential part of their business, not an extra thing that they'd like to do sometime when they have a chance. When you're thinking of it like that, you're just never going to do it. And it's really shooting yourself in the foot to say, I don't have time to talk about how I can help people. I don't have time to tell my story in my community. Well, we were talking before the show, and I said that one of the greatest lies of the last 50 years is this idea that if you build it, they will come. Right. From a great movie and a different context, but people started repeating it all the time for anything. And it's like, well, if I open a gym, people will come. If I put a blog post out there, it will get 50 conversions out of it. It's like, nope, that's not how it works. You got to be out there. It's got to be a part of your process. I know that processes and systems are really important to you all at Fitness Revolution, that you teach your clients how to do that. And I always tell people that you have to include your communications as another business operation, not as something nice to have. And then the other thing, I see that some people haven't thought about what their values are and what their key messages are. And when you, I know, again, you guys talk a lot about developing your values and your key messages. And when you do that, it helps. It's a true north in all your content. Like, well, I'd like to write about this, but does it enforce our values? Does it illustrate our key messaging points? And if it doesn't, then maybe it's not right. But if you can find a way to steer it in there, then it's all kind of tethered together. It all sounds natural. It all sounds like it's coming from the same people, and it's relevant to the audience that you've already decided to pursue. So I guess what I'm saying is that your communications needs to be part of your business strategy. And that includes your values, and that includes your key messaging, and that includes your operations. And the ones who, my clients who are successful know all of this and do all of this. And when COVID hit, they turned on a dime and they're still in business. The ones who don't really think about this, it's kind of indicative of not really thinking about other things too. If you don't understand why you need to make the time to tell your story, then you're probably missing the boat on some other things that you need to be paying attention to. And these are things that you all talk about all the time.
Definitely. I mean, I think there's like this weird thing for like gym owners that don't get the storytelling side of marketing and how important that is. And then there's the other side where they like, for some reason, they just think like kind of sharing random content is all of a sudden going to make somebody fall in love with them.
No.
And it's, I always laugh with like, every time I go on like a gym owner's like social page, and I'll see them share how much water should you drink in a day. And it's like, how many times do you see a fitness professional sharing that? And it's like, okay, that's not really landing. Like, that's not telling a story.
No, it's not. And that's nice to include as a small part of what you're sending to people. But if it's just the generic stuff that everyone's using, then you're not landing, as you say. And that's why I think it's important to focus on your key messages and your values, and know who your ideal client is and what they're interested in and where they are. Real obvious example is people in my demographic over 50, they're on Facebook. They are not on TikTok yet. Maybe they will be at some point, but they're not yet. So I don't spend any time on TikTok myself. I don't create content for TikTok, not because I don't like TikTok, but because my customers aren't there. They're on Facebook, right? And when you do all the research and self-examination that you all teach, you find, who do I want? Where are they? What resonates with them? And then you bake that into your communications plan. So again, it's just a part of systematizing it and treating it like another business process.
Definitely. I mean, because it's so important, like, to obviously not be emotionally attached to where you go and seek your clients from, because like you have to go where they are. Like you can't be ignorant to that. And I remember I was coaching this one guy probably a little over a year ago, and he was having that issue, and he wasn't getting this, where he was showing up big time on TikTok, and it was actually helping him. He grew a pretty big following on Instagram from it, because it was funneling people to Instagram, but they were all like young girls and young kids and stuff like that. I'm like, no one that's actually going to be a client. Right. So it's like, great. Okay. You got some ego numbers there, but it's not actually helping you in your business. That's where we're like, kind of like, we had to redirect his focus on where he was putting his time and effort, because it wasn't building his business.
That's right. And that's why you need to think about everything you're doing needs to support your business goals, not just random stuff. Like you were saying, there's a lot of bad content out there, a lot of bad fitness content out there, as we all know, and people use it because it's cheap. Well, where'd it come from? I don't know. Who's behind it? I don't know. What do they know? I don't know. And are you going to see it everywhere? You and I see the same crappy content used all the time. Does nothing to distinguish yourself. What I try to do with my content, and what I encourage my customers to do, is to distinguish themselves in their communities as the local expert on over 50 fitness. And that's a slightly different way of saying, ooh, get more leads and convert them and, do all these aggressive marketing techniques. It's like, no, your community needs to know that there's a highly skilled fitness professional in town who can help older people and who wants to help older people. It's a slightly different way of getting at it, but it's really effective. And it's, it's less salesy. People say, oh, I don't like to sell all the time. I don't either. Or, that's the great thing about content. It's not about selling. It's not about 2-for-1 discounts. It's not about, how to get more people in right now. It's about building relationships, telling your story. And, you mentioned the people putting out the wrong kinds of content. A real strong example of this that I see a lot of young people do is they'll put out content that's too much about themselves.
Yeah.
Right. The obvious, you want to do that a little. You want people to know who you are. Like I was saying, that there's an actual person here and get to know you and like you and trust you a little bit. But I see a lot of guys who post on TikTok and Instagram, with their shirts off and flexing in front of the mirror. And, and what does that get them? It gets them a lot of girls who like to look at boys, or a lot of kids who think, oh, I want to go to the gym so I can, have muscles like that guy. But it's kind of a turnoff for anybody else. And it doesn't focus on the client at all. It's if you're just focusing on yourself, then you're missing the opportunity. So when I say tell your story, I don't mean take your shirt off and list all your certifications. I mean, make it clear to your community that you want to help older people and that you provide a premium service. They will pay for it. It's not about saving a nickel. It's about getting high quality service that's going to help them live the life that they want to live.
Absolutely.
So keep the focus on the prospect and on the customer, not on how hot you are with your shirt off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely one of the negatives of the fitness industry. But so in terms of that, like that's what you just kind of brought up there with the mindset of the fitness professional and gym owner. Typically, unfortunately, we see a lot of like the gym owners jumping at, like, when it comes to their marketing, basically just running with like at the seat of their pants and like just kind of like jumping at whatever fire sale idea they want to do,
Yeah.
Promotions, things like that, and like kind of devaluing their service rather than raising up their service and positioning it in more of an expert way. So obviously, like with your approach, it's the opposite of that. It's more about positioning and the long-term game plan and bringing in high quality people, not just throwing the fishing net out and seeing whatever comes in.
Sure.
How are you getting around that mentality of the gym owners kind of trying to chase the quick money type of thing?
You know, if I knew, I would tell you. That's a constant challenge that I have, right? For me, there are basically three types of gym owners or studio owners out there. There are those who get it already and want to pursue this market and understand that they don't have the time or the skill to do it, to do the content themselves. Those are my favorite people in the world, right? I hook up with them. They say, "Oh my gosh, I've been looking for you. Yes, sign me up." Great. Then there's the people on the other end who don't want older people, and that's fine too. I'm like, well, good. Then, you know, if you want to work with younger people or elite athletes or whatever it is, you know, go with God and have all success, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's that group in the middle, and you know, that's the ones that I struggle sometimes to reach, because maybe they don't see the potential of the market, or maybe they do, but they don't see the value in what I do. And so they're reluctant to commit to it, or they just sort of stumble along, or they think I'll get to that later. And it's hard to convince people that they need to change their way of thinking about something. And especially when it involves social media and stuff like that. And, you know, a lot of my content is created for three primary purposes, and one of them is social media. And because everyone can do social media, there's a devaluing of it. It's like, oh yeah, I can put a picture on Facebook. Yeah. I guess you can. Good for you. You know, it's not, that doesn't mean it's going to be effective. So that is the challenge that I have with people who say they want to reach the market and say they value content, but insist that they'll do it themselves. Most of the time they don't. I've met a few who do, and are pretty good at it, and they like it. You know, that's great. Good for them. Glad to know they're out there. But, you know, most people can't. I can't fix my car when it breaks. You know, my heating system went out the other day, and it's getting cold at night, and my heating system stopped working. I don't know how to fix that. So I'm happy to pay someone who does. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And
I don't understand why there's the same kind of resistance to marketing, but there's also really dangerous myths that persist about this market. You know, says older people aren't on social media. They are. It says older people are cheap. They're not. That says I'll hurt them because they're frail and they're going to fall apart if I work them hard. Not true.
Yeah.
It's a really fascinating story about how today's 50-year-old is not the 50-year-old of a few years ago, or 70-year-old. You know, I mean, I'm 58. When I used to be that when people were 58, they were trying to retire and move to Boca and die in 10 years, you know, and that's just not the case anymore. We're all living longer, and we want better lives, and we're willing to pay for help to have them.
Definitely. That couldn't be more true with addressing that demographic. But I think that is like definitely the biggest issue with gym owners when it comes to marketing, is not looking at it from the long game and just chasing that quick money and making decisions from that perspective. And unfortunately, like obviously, as you know, I mean, we have people in the fitness business space that are promoting that type of thinking, and driving that mentality of like, oh, you can just make more sales in the front end and it will overcome everything. And it's like, no, that's not going to build a sustainable business that's going to be around for 10, 20, 30 years.
That's right.
And
it's like training. It's like working out, you know, or losing weight. Someone comes to you and says, I want to lose 50 pounds in 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not real smart. Maybe there's a more
Mm.
reasonable goal we can have and an approach that's going to help you reach that more reasonable goal. So this in the same way that a lot of potential clients have unrealistic goals about losing weight or getting stronger, whatever it is, I think a lot of gym owners are kind of easy prey for these folks who say, oh, I'll get you X number of leads and I'll get
Mhm.
you this much of something else. And I'm just not interested in that. And I don't think smart business owners are going to fall for that every time, but a lot of them do.
No. Oh yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, and what I also like to about your approach is that it also intertwines platforms that you own. And
Yes.
obviously, like with blogging, emailing, your website, like that's all stuff that you own, control. You control that complete experience from
That's
start
right.
to finish. Whereas relying solely on social media, I mean, look at all the changes we've seen in the platforms just this year alone. So it can be very frustrating to only be building around a platform that you don't really have complete control over. Whereas with your approach and the way that you go about things, it intertwines platforms that are controlled by you, and that also live longer. Like there's life to them, so people can find whatever. Say it's a blog post from 2 years ago and
That's right.
connect with it, and next thing you know, they're booking a call with you.
That's right. I'm so glad.
Whereas Facebook, you can't.
You can't do a lot on Facebook, and I'm really
Yeah.
glad that you brought that up because I'm on Facebook. Everybody is, right? We kind of have to be these days. But Facebook could go away. It could it does change its rules and its
Yeah.
algorithms all the time. And it's not there to help you. It's there to get eyeballs and sell advertising. So you got to have Facebook. Sorry, you just do, especially if you're trying to reach this market because your audience is there. But to your point, and it's an excellent point, you got to own your own contacts. You don't own your contacts on Facebook. Get them on your email list. Everything you're doing needs to be drawing people to your email list, because you will always control that and you'll own that. And that's going to be a really powerful asset. So yeah, Facebook's important, but to your point, you really got to be in control of your own assets, and your assets include your contact list.
Definitely. Yeah. And also like behaviors like being around like myself, just use an example, like my aunt and uncle, they're both in their mid 60s, and their mentality is if I'm looking for something or want to know something, they're going right to Google.
Yeah.
I mean, that is their first move that they make, is like, I'm going to go to Google, search it, find what I'm looking for. And same thing, obviously, with having like your like social content along with searchable content.
Yes.
It's important because that demographic really uses like Google or search engines to find things.
They do.
They're not just randomly scrolling type of thing.
No, and
to find things.
They consult blogs and they spend time on websites trying to get to know the owner or the provider before they make a big purchase. And joining a gym or a studio is a big purchase for most people. And so that's exactly how they do it. And you've shown why I created the sort of 3-pronged approach to content, because you have to be on Facebook because that's where people are, but you've got to have fresh content on your website every week, a new blog about these topics that Google will find and recognize over time. They're not going to recognize it tomorrow, but over time they notice that, hey, this website has consistent updates. It has new material that's relevant to this demographic, and it's good. Google and all the search engines also, I'm not entirely sure how, but they do measure quality. And if you're putting crap up there, you're not going to get the return on your SEO as you do for something that's good. And consistency is super important on ranking for SEO.
Yeah.
So the three legs of the bar stool that I use are Facebook and your blog and your email newsletters. And I hear from some gym owners who don't want to have a blog or who don't want to email people because they think it's annoying, or or what have you. And I think we're all on the same page about how that's simply not true. You've got to be doing it, and you've got to be using all these channels, your email, your
Yeah.
social media, your blog, maybe even print something sometimes, maybe contact the local newspaper or radio or TV station to get a little free coverage. There's a lot you can do. You can't just rely on one thing.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I hope that's like one of the biggest lessons that gym owners listening have learned, especially over this past year or two, is how fragile that makes you by just relying on one thing. Even if it's working really well, great. While it's working well, go and find something else that can also supplement that. Because I mean, there's going to be a day where that's not going to work as well, and if you're all relying on that, then you're kind of left scrambling then.
That's right. That's right.
So I was wondering if if you happen to have an example of maybe like a current client or a past client that maybe was in that same boat as kind of like that gym owner that we've been describing as somebody who was chasing more of the quick, fast result and started working with you and are now set up for long-term success. Do you have any kind of examples of kind of case studies from people like that?
Let me think. The kind of feedback I get from my happy customers is that they get a lot of positive feedback themselves from their clients and from people who come in that they'll reference a certain article or a recipe that I've provided, and they'll say, "Oh, I really like the way that you've been sending out this new such and such." They don't know where it came from. Then it doesn't have my name on it. I don't put my name on any of this. It's each gym or studio puts their own name on it, but people notice, and people particularly in this demographic notice when you send them good material and when they can find you on Google and when they go to your website and they see images of people who look like them. You were talking about the very off-putting images of hypersexualized young people in skimpy clothing. If I go to a website and see that, I think, well, okay, that's not for me. Where's next?
Yeah.
Next, where's the one that's for me? Then I find one that's got relevant content to my demographic and it has people my age working out. And yeah, some of them are super fit and look great. And some of them are just ordinary people. It's like, okay, good. That's telling me what your values are. And that's telling me who you want as a customer. And that's telling me a lot about whether this is the place for me or not. So, I don't know that I have a case study of somebody who was doing it all wrong and then met me and suddenly had a moment where everything started happening for them. But almost all of them stay with me for a long time. And almost all of them say similar points to what I just said, that their people notice it and they like it. And it's a very effective way to get their message out there. Some of them, actually, something that has helped directly is media outreach, which I started doing after COVID hit in, what was it, March of 2020. A lot of the people I worked with were, like I said, were very smart and started offering online training immediately. Some of them started offering outdoor classes. I had a client in Massachusetts who, once the weather cleared up, she couldn't have her spin classes indoors. So she took all her bikes outside. And it's a semi-rural area next to a country area with a couple big roadways, right? But very pretty and nice outdoor atmosphere. And she's got, 20 older women out there on spin bikes in the middle of the day as all this traffic's driving by.
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty awesome. I said, you need to call the TV station and the newspaper and let them know about this. Send them an email, tell them what's going on. And she did, and she got a lot of great coverage out of that because, it's a smart way to think that you've got a good story here. You've got old women exercising in the middle of a pandemic outside. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's a positive story. It's a local spin on COVID. She got a ton of response out of that. So content is more of a long play. kind of like I have a podcast, and I've learned I've had a few people sign up for my services because they heard my podcast, but I think the greater impact comes from over time. Been doing it for a little more than a year now, and maybe after 2 or 3 years, the impact will really start to pay off. Similarly, using content, it's not a 2-for-1 coupon. It's not call me today and I'll get you in for half price. That's not what it is. Yeah. So you got to get away from that kind of quick hit like you were talking about, and get more into developing relationships and letting people get to know you and like you and trust you.
Absolutely. That is the recipe. And what you said too, originally also brought up the fact that we didn't even touch on, okay, we've been talking about like how it's just helping new leads and stuff like that, but this is also going to strengthen your retention with existing clients, and tie them more into why they need to stay members of your facility, which is huge. I mean, we all know, I mean, retention is king. Retention is where you actually grow your business, not just driving new people in, because if they're just coming in as fast as they're going out, then you're going nowhere and just stretching yourself out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because most of the people I talk to are so focused on leads and converting, and then as soon as a customer signs up, it's like, oh well, okay, done with you now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, such a mistake. You got to keep showing them that you care about them and that you're interested in them, and that you're glad that they're with you. And
absolutely,
content's a great way to do that.
Definitely. I mean, I mean, like, if anything, once you get, I think, like, once you get that permission to, like, where they to charge them, where they become a client, that's where, like, you want to make sure you're in front of them even more, because guess what? I mean, just because they decide to pay you once doesn't mean they're going to decide to pay you 3, 4, or 5 times down the road. And also doesn't mean that your competitors or other options aren't being presented to them.
That's right.
So if you kind of disappear now that they have seen, like, your client, then they're going to be taken in by somebody else.
Yeah, you can't take them for granted. Plus, you don't want to miss the upsell opportunities. You know, you guys talk about this. I know we're selling products or more training or a higher level of service or online resources or whatever. There's all sorts of stuff you can sell your clients, but you got to keep them on board to do that.
Definitely. So if you're listening to this and you haven't gotten the picture yet of how important this is, then I think you need to re-listen to this and then take some good notes, because this is marketing. Like, this is exactly what you need to be doing to build a sustainable business. But Jay, as we work towards wrapping up the conversation, as I mentioned to you before, I like to kind of end with you sharing some last minute, like, with insight or maybe inspiration, whatever you feel. So if a gym owner came to you looking for support from your perspective, what do you feel is the most important thing for that gym owner to hear?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a encapsulation of what we've been saying, is that you have to commit to understanding the value of communications, and then you have to commit to doing it consistently. Whether that means that you write every word yourself or you hire someone like me to do it for you, doesn't really matter. The audience doesn't know and doesn't care. They just want to see the consistent output so that they can get to know you and like you and trust you and give you their business in the short term and in the long term. So I think the number one thing is to be consistent. And that means be consistent with your business strategy, your values, your key messaging, your growth goals, and then, treat it like you treat every other business necessity, because it's another business necessity.
Definitely. I could not agree more that consistency is so powerful. And people are constantly searching for those, like, secret ninja tactics. When it's not about that.
Sorry, they're not there. It's like, I want to be on Men's Fitness next month. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But can I lose a few pounds and feel better and sleep better at night if I consistently exercise and watch what I eat? You bet. There's so many similarities between communicating and working out that I wish more fitness pros could see it, because once
Mhm.
you do, it's just real obvious.
Definitely. Absolutely. That's consistency is it. It's choose a path and then stick with it and keep
Yep.
showing up. And I was like, at minimum, commit to 6 months of doing it consistently and then
Yep.
see how much you've grown over that time. And then I guarantee you it's going to fuel you to keep going. But that's where a lot of people drop the ball because they expect too much too soon.
Yep.
And
Couldn't have
then
said
like
it
they
better.
stopped right before they hit that goal. Like what's that picture of that the two people, like the guy's like digging in the dirt or whatever, and the other guy quits right before he's about to strike gold.
Yeah.
And the other one keeps going. So
Yeah.
I mean it's the same thing. It's just you can't stop.
Well, that's right. I love it. Good message.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jay, for that. So with that being said, I do want to wrap up the conversation. This has been a fantastic conversation and one that I think is really valuable and something that gym owners need to hear. And as I mentioned before, like make sure if you weren't in a place to really digest this, re-listen to it at a time when you can and take notes. So you're more active listening to the things that Jay's sharing within this message. But Jay, like, thank you so much again for your time and not only your time, but like what you're doing in this industry for your clients and for the fitness industry as a whole. It's what obviously makes it a great industry to be in.
Yeah. Well, Justin, thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it.
And for those that want to connect with you further and maybe talk about how you can help them or have questions with their marketing, like what's the best avenue for them to connect with you?
Sure. My website is primefitcontent.com. So that's prime, like the prime of your life, fitcontent.com. And you can download my ebook there. You can email me. My email's there, but it's also just jay@primefitcontent.com. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all that stuff. Would love to hear from people.
And I hope you guys do reach out to Jay. I mean, if you have any inclination to want to connect or any question that you have, ask. I mean, that's how opportunities are created and doors open up when you just take that first step.
That's right. I mean, I'm happy to talk to anybody anytime. I'm not just trying to make a sale all the time. So reach out anytime.
Thank you for offering that. And lastly, I just want to thank you, obviously the listener, because without you, we wouldn't have a show. And I'm happy that you are looking for ways and resources to improve your business, because that's so important and something that we should never stop doing. And as I said already, now that you've taken in this conversation, it's about how you're going to apply the information that was shared in this conversation to actually get the value from it. So don't just be that person that listens and never does anything with it. Listen and apply it, and then you'll see growth. With that being said, I look forward to having you join us on the next episode of the Fitness Business Freedom Show. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode on the Fitness Business Freedom Show. On behalf of Fitness Revolution and myself, we are thrilled you are looking for ways and resources to move your business forward, and we are honored to be that source for you. If you would like to receive more business building support from us, be sure to head over to the show notes and join our subscriber list and stay on top of all the industry insights that matter most to you. Now, before I close out today's show, if you found this episode beneficial in any way, I just ask you to leave us a simple review to help other gym owners find us and discover this show. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of the Fitness Business Freedom Show.